Now we are now moving to our main session with Mr. Mandeya, and he's going to be taking us through through the topic, the rise of fossil fuels in Africa. Mr. Mandeya, are you ready?
Right, yes, I'm ready tonight. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you, sir. Welcome to esh.africa, and I'm giving you this opportunity to share with us on this topic, the rise of fossil fuels in Africa. The floor is yours, sir.
Right, thank you, Tinai, for the wonderful presentation and the insights that you have shared on the challenges that we face in as far as pursuing sustainable goal number 7 is concerned. Yes, it is a very big challenge that we have as a continent. You would notice that Africa emits less than 4% of global carbon dioxide, but at the same time, it struggles to provide electricity to half of its population. And then what does that mean? It means that then there is a need for a relook at how we are going to develop our energy infrastructure in Africa. And it entails that we look at how we are going to build these infrastructures with the sensitivity of the massive impacts on future emissions and living standards that are entailed as we develop these infrastructures. So maybe just a brief explanation of what we mean or understand by fossil fuel for the benefit of our listeners and participants on this platform. Fossil fuel is any of a class, it's any of a class of hydrocarbon containing material of biological origin occurring within the Earth's crust that can be used as a source of energy. And this includes, of course, coal, petroleum, natural gas, oil shales, bitumen, tar sands, and heavy oils. Now, fossil fuels, biofuels, and waste are the most important sources of energy in Africa. Yet they also cause quite a lot of hazard to the health of the people on the continent. So, fossil fuels represent about 54% of total primary energy supply. Oil, coal, and natural gas contribute respectively 22%, 16%, and 12% to the continent's total primary energy supply. That is according to the statistics of about 2009. In 2010, about 80% of the continent's electricity was generated from fossil fuel. Projections indicate that this share will remain high for the next 3 decades. Now, Africa is extensively endowed, of course, with fossil fuels, including oil, natural gas, and coal. The continent's oil and gas landscape is fast changing, and more reserves are likely to be discovered in the coming decades, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. That is according to the African Development Bank report of 2011. So in 2011, the continent accounted for about 9.5%, 8%, and 4% of the global proven oil, natural gas, and coal reserves, respectively. And that's another report by the BP Petroleum Company. We shows that more than 122 billion barrels of proven oil reserves and almost 159 barrels of potential oil reserves lie below the surface of the African continent. Now, in terms of natural gas, the continent holds about 560 trillion barrels of cubic feet of proven reserves and 319 of potential reserves. Now, the production of natural gas and coal increased during the last decade, as you might have observed. And between 2000 and 2011, Africa's natural gas production almost doubled from 58.4 billion cubic meters to about 110 cubic meters. Most of the production was concentrated particularly in Algeria, Egypt, which accounted for respectively 28% and 40%. Over 55% of natural gas produced in Africa is exported. And during the same period, Africa's total coal production increased from 230.5 billion tons to 259.5 million tons. Most of the coal, over 90%, of course, was produced in South Africa. Then out of Africa's total coal output, about a quarter was exported. The industrial and transport sector, especially road transport, are the biggest fossil fuel consumers in Africa. And these two sectors accounted for about 22% and 47% respectively of total fossil fuel consumption in 2009. Now, what that means is there is a lot of carbon emission in the atmosphere as a result of this rate of consumption of the fossil fuel. And whilst the world is driving towards the consumption of low carbonated fuels in order to save the environment and the atmosphere, actually we are increasing in terms of consumption of the fossil fuels, which have an impact, of course, on climate change, just like what you pointed out, Tinai, in your presentation. So, fossil fuels constitute a major source of income for producing countries. Then what could be the way forward? As an illustration, oil exports account for about 80% of government revenues in Libya, Nigeria, and Angola. While the share of government revenues from natural gas in Algeria stands at 60%, it has been shown that for oil and gas exporting countries, economic recovery since 2020 has been driven by export of these commodities. And this is also according to the African Development Bank report of 2012. And a number of fossil fuel-rich countries, Algeria, Chad, Gabon, Libya, and Nigeria, use this revenue generated from these resources to finance infrastructure development and public consumption. So there is a paradox in that. We rely heavily on these fossil fuels, and yet they have got this amount of danger and damage to the atmosphere. Then what can we do, given that we get so much revenue from the fossil fuels? So it's kind of like a paradox. So according to the United Nations Economic Committee for Africa report, over 80% of electricity generated across the continent is also from fossil fuels. And most strikingly, and despite these huge energy resources, the continent is still faced with enormous energy challenges that include low access to modern energy, insufficient energy infrastructure, low efficiency, and lack of institutional and technical capacity to use these huge resources. You mentioned the challenges of electricity in Zimbabwe in your presentation, and how actually climate change is also affecting the water levels in the Kariba Dam. So, for example, only about 31% of sub-Saharan African populations have access to electricity, with about 60% and 14% electrification rates in the urban and rural areas, respectively. So, in addition, traditional biomass dominates energy consumption in the region, accounting for about 50% of the total energy supply in 2015. So these energy challenges have hampered economic growth, thus contributing both economic and energy poverty in the continent. So despite these challenges, the vast reserves Africa with great opportunities to improve energy access, accelerate economic growth, and reduce poverty. But then, how do we then make these fossils much more climate friendly that is the challenge that African governments and economies are facing at the moment. How then do we reduce? And we've noted from my introduction that it's only 4% that we emit. So who is emitting much more than we are emitting? Those countries that we are exporting to are the biggest culprits in terms of climate and environmental damage. So, however, the heavy reliance on fossil fuels to generate energy has contributed to a number of environmental and social problems at the local, regional, and global levels, including depletion of non-renewable resources. The ozone, just like what you mentioned in your in the previous presentation. So the contribution of energy generation to the latter is particularly significant due to the emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases generated during combustion of fossil fuels, which has exacerbated the impact of climate change. And according to the IEA, the burning of fossil fuels of energy GHG emissions in 2008 up to 2016. So clearly, there are concerns with the continuation of this trend. The Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change suggests global emission must be reduced to about 50 to 80% by 2050. Compared to 1990 levels, in order to limit average global temperature increase to about 2% above the pre-industrial levels. Then how is this achievable, given the consumption and given the reliance that most of our countries have on fossil fuel? Is that achievable? We are not so sure. This implies a carbon-constrained future, where the use of fossil fuels will be restrained and more attention paid to less polluting energy systems. So there again is the paradox that we are facing this challenge of climate change, and yet again we are producing so much in terms of fossil fuel energy for consumption and for our other purposes that we use in our day-to-day lives. How then could we achieve the 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels? It means quite a lot of work has to be done in that regard. Although Africa accounts for less than 4% of the global emission, just that's what I've alluded before, you would notice that it is a continent which is highly vulnerable to increased climate-related shocks, such as droughts, the storms, and recently the flooding that we experienced in the previous year. Issues of flooding and extreme temperatures are some of the challenges that Africa is facing, and yet it only accounts for less than 4% of the global emission. So the big nations themselves are culprits in this whole thing, and therefore there is need, of course, for the African continent to invest with a view to, of course, getting some sort of reprieve in terms of reducing the impact of the emissions that are happening in the atmosphere, which is apparently affecting everyone, including the African continent. Right, so this including agriculture and food security, water supply, healthcare, energy and regional security, biodiversity, etc., have also had their fair share of the shocks that we are experiencing in terms of the impact on the climate and the weather, which have resulted and necessitated all those crises that we have faced. The crises of floods, the crises of drought, the crises of like what we experienced in Chimani in the previous years. So these are some of the challenges that we have to look at seriously. And as Africa, how can we then mitigate against the impact of the challenges that the fossil fuels that we are producing as a continent will have on us. It would be maybe appropriate that those that consume these from our natural resources, those that are maybe much more developed, would need to invest back in Africa to mitigate the impact of these fossil fuels on our environment as well as on in the continent. So this is maybe in a nutshell what I can say about the rise of fossil fuel consumption in Africa. I will be maybe entertaining a few questions from here if there is anyone who would want to further clarify or maybe give a bit more input on this topic. You're most welcome. Thank you, Tinai.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mandeya, for that insightful presentation and all the numbers that you have highlighted. According as we have heard from Mr. Mandeya's presentation, we can see that the consumption of fossil fuels in Africa is not only affecting it is affecting a number of sustainable development goals that we are trying to achieve. That is, go for eradicating poverty, go for better economic countries, but sustainable goals for ensuring affordable, clean and energy for everyone. So we can see that from its life cycle, fossil fuels, from extraction, the end use and what in the end products, we can see that it's really our environment. It's really impacting a lot. There is need to address the rise in consumption of fossil fuels so that we can combat it and reduce some of its impact that it has had and it might have in the future. So, like Mandeya has highlighted, is giving this opportunity to the floor for any questions, comments, and additions on this subject. Anyone from the audience, you are welcome. Okay, I guess everyone is heard and learned a lot. But one of the pointers that I've got from what Mr. Mandeya presented is that Africa as a continent, our carbon emissions due to fossil fuel consumption is very low compared to other countries. However, most of these fossil fuels, they are being extracted in Africa, and it tends to lead to issues such as environmental degradation, deforestation. Those are some of the issues that have come because we are the main source of some of these fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, etc. So it's one of the pointers that Mr. Mandeya highlighted. As being the source, we are not necessarily contributing to carbon emission, but because we are the ones who is extracting and processing these fossil fuels. Therefore, we are also contributing to global change, to climate change, but our contribution is quite low compared to those that tend to mainly use these fossil fuels. I'm also, is there anyone else who might want to say something from the audience?
The topic tonight is so technical.
Yeah, it is very technical, and I guess people are still deciphering what you have presented.
I hope I made sense. Quite a lot of figures and the presentation.
Yes, you really made sense, and I really liked all the numbers that you have highlighted. It shows how how this fossil fuel consumption is affecting our environment and where we might go. So I think it was quite insightful. But our audience is still
maybe the audience, anyone would want to maybe tell us how can we actually get out of this challenge? We are these fossil fuels are a source of revenue for Africa, and yet they've got
like
that so much impact on our environment. How do we go about it then? How do we get around this challenge? We rely on them, and yet they've got these effects on us.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mandeya is saying we have highlighted the challenges. We have seen all the numbers, but on the other side, it's one of our revenue sources. Most countries relies on these fossil fuel, on the production and the exportation of these fossil fuels. So what can be done to combat the use and the utilization of the utilization of fossil fuels? This question is posed to everyone from the audience. I can see there is a hand up. Simuka, you can come up. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Robert, for your very insightful presentation. So I guess for me, it's just more of not a question, but more of a comment on, with all the climate change, the fossil fuel that we obviously have to use. Now, I guess for me, it's how is this going to impact for the next generation? How can we, try to drive to reduce all this climate change for, the future, the next generation, the youth, the children of the future? So it's just more of a contribution, not a question. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that addition. Yeah, the challenge is we are the most vulnerable region to the impact of global climate, just like as highlighted. We are the most vulnerable, and yet we contribute so much less in terms of emissions. How can we be protected as an African country? That's the question.
Okay, thank you, Vani, for that. And I think Mr. Mandeya has endorsed it. I can see there's a hand up from Sia Makai. You can come up, say.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I may have missed some of it, but
okay.
My comment to or response to the question posed is perhaps may sound more like a conspiracy theory, but I feel and fear that while we do see the impacts of climate change, especially in the last 2 years with rains, flooding, changes in temperature, delayed seasons in Africa and elsewhere in the world, the big corporates, including governments, are reluctant to move away from fossil fuels because it still makes money for them. That's one. And the poor are the ones who feel the impact most. Secondly, while there may be solutions to go green, from solar panels to and other ways of getting green energy, again, the big corporates are delaying that move because they want to create opportunities and then restricts entrance of newcomers. In South Africa, we have established law now to allow for independent power producers to come in and sell into the grid cleaner energy. But the uptake and the red tape is a bit limiting. So it's unfortunate that, again, money seems to be the determining factor, even though we are suffering. That's just my 2 cents worth of a comment today.
Right. Thank you very much for your input there. Yeah, it's quite worrying that we are the most vulnerable, and our vulnerability would actually have enormous implications on key sectors of our economy, the sectors such as the regional, our regional, I mean the agriculture, the food security, the water supply, the healthcare, energy, and other regional security issues, and biodiversity. All these things are, have a bearing on our day-to-day lives, and yet we are faced with this huge challenge. Of course, the developed world has actually developed means and mechanisms of dealing with these things, but then in Africa, maybe we can use such platforms like our SADC and our African Union platforms to explore some of these issues seriously, and maybe come up with stringent regulations in terms of how we would need to protect our environment and the climate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Makai, for that, and thank you for endorsing Mr. Mandeya. And I would also like to add my opinion on that. I've been reading a number of articles trying to get a gist of how COVID-19 have been impacting on these issues of fossil fuel consumption. And one of the things that I've noted, it was highlighted by Mr. Zani when we were discussing on climate change effects on energy. He highlighted that because of lockdowns that were brought by COVID-19, because of less movement, less use of petroleum, less use of less production, less use of coal and other things, we have seen a surge drop in the carbon emission due to fossil fuel consumption. But because of these other things that have been highlighted, such as poverty and the issue of capital, you find out that because of COVID-19, most people lost their jobs, they lost their income sources. So some of those people, they reverted and could not afford to use electricity, could not afford to maybe to install solar and other issues. And it has brought about the use of fossil fuels such as firewood, because most people couldn't, because of COVID-19, most people are no longer able to afford some of these energy sources, so they opt for the cheaper ones. And I would like to believe it has brought about a slight rise in fuel consumption because of COVID-19. That's my thoughts. Mr. Chinenyanga, I can see your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mandeya, for steering up this discussion and a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Tiona, for giving me this opportunity to have a contribution. I have a little bit more, it's not a question, but it's also a contribution, maybe a comment like to what Mr. Mandeya was saying. I would like to also touch on what Mr. Mandeya said on the first presentation when he pointed up the figures, when he said there is a higher percentage of emission coming from the automobiles, which is quite good research. And I also noted that there is very high percentage of emission from fossil fuels from the automobiles. And I also want to touch a little bit about what Sia have said earlier. It is all anchored to much more anchored to our government contribution towards the change of fossil fuels to more greener energy sources. I would like to give a good example. For instance, here in Zimbabwe, we also see a contribution that the government have made, that when you like to import these green fuel equipment, it is for free, is free duty. But however, I think there is also need to move a little bit much faster to those higher percentages that Mr. Mandeya have raised in his presentation. Instead for providing more free duty to those equipment that we can use, like the solar panels, they could quickly move to those instruments or equipment that can promote greener energy to the automobile, the higher percentage, where we are getting higher percentage of consumption of fossil fuel and effects to the climate change. I think our governments need to rush a little bit much quicker to cover up that percentage, which is contributing to the climate change in terms of fossil fuel extraction. And also, I would like to maybe just have a little bit comment about we as Africans. I think, like what Vani have said, we need to look up on more like on the sustainable thing about our future, what our children are going to have, our future children are going to live with and all the stuff like that. I think we as Africans, we need to quickly move to more of being technical. We understand we have a number of news that says there's a car which is using hydrogen, there's an automobile engine that are using water and all the stuff like that. I think we as Africans, we need to really adopt or actually quickly think on how we can actually make these engines more usable in Africa, so that we can quickly adopt these machines in using them up there, so that we can reduce the fossil fuel. Like what Mr. Mandeya highlighted, that we are the guys who are most suffering in terms of these fossil fuel extraction, because we have the sources, and we also suffer at the same time in terms of this climate change. So I think we as Africans, we need to change our mindset and move much more in the technical side to push to those greener energy, green sources of energy. So this is more like my contribution towards the presentation of what Mr. Mandeya said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tine, for that contribution. Thank you for that one. And I would also like to endorse and add on by saying that our consumption for fossil fuel, as I have highlighted when I was presenting the spotlight, it is one of the main causes, one of the main factors that have led to climate change, that have led to global warming. And if we are not to address the consumption of fossil fuels, we will never. It will be difficult for us to achieve some of the goals that we want to achieve, such as the SDG goal number 7 that I presented. So we really need to address fossil fuel consumption and control and prevent and manage this consumption, so that we can move further with and achieve some of the goals that we aim to achieve, such as the Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which aims at ensuring affordable and clean energy for everyone. However, if we continue using these fossil fuels, it will be very difficult for us to achieve some of those goals, because the climate change will bring in certain effects, those I've highlighted, that may impair the progress towards the achievement of those goals. So we really need to address the issue of fossil fuel consumption in Africa. Thank you, Mr. Tine, for that, for what you highlighted. Is there anyone else from the audience with a contribution? Okay, there's a question that was raised, but I didn't have anyone who came up to answer that question. And I would like to hear someone giving us what we can do on that. But thanks to Sia, he highlighted a few pointers on that. But if there is anyone else who may want to add on that, the question was said we have the fossil fuel consumption is much lower in Africa. However, it's one of our source of revenue through the exportation and extraction of fossil fuels. However, the impact, the manifestations that are brought about due to the consumption of those fossil fuels by the countries that we export to, they tend to affect us as Africans. So what can be done, since we are the ones who we have the main sources of these fossil fuel? What can we do as Africans to combat the consumption of our fossil fuels? I'm posing this question again to the audience. There's anyone with a different thought on it? I don't know if Mr. Chinenyanga, you had lowered your hand, or you have another point on this question. I can see your hand is up.
Sorry, my apologies.
Okay. Right, Tingai, I'm of the opinion that, like what the previous speaker just alluded to, investment in solar energy, I think, would be the best alternative to all this. Yes, we have governments really doing their best in terms of lifting tariffs on the importation of solar equipment into the country. But there is still more that can be done, given the advantage that we have of so abundant sunlight. I think the solar energy option is the way to go. And also looking at the era in which we are at the moment, the fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and yet we are not catching up so fast to the fourth industrial revolution. And yet some of these most developed economies are so far ahead in terms of embracing the fourth industrial revolution era. There is really need, like I say, for very stringent measures in our jurisdictions to look at these things and maybe agree on how then we can come up with our own means and ways of promoting alternative, cleaner and safe sources of energy. You look at what is happening in Zambia at the moment with the issue of charcoal. There is so much deforestation that has happened in Zambia. You go to Zambia right now, it's a sight and pathetic sight to see with the consumption of charcoal. Even in our neighboring Mozambique, there is so much use of charcoal as there. How then can they be helped out? Gas, of course, is there, but it's very expensive for many. It's inaccessible. But these communities now need to be helped to find other alternative sources of energy. That is where the challenge is. How do we then recommend the alternative sources of energy? And what are these alternative sources of energy that are accessible to the poorer communities in our jurisdiction, so that we would actually ameliorate this impact on the many livelihoods that are affected by this.
Thank you, Mr. Mandeya, for highlighting that. And yes, I had the same thought as well. I think solar is the way to go for the African countries, but the most challenging issue with solar is that it's not as affordable as we think, because as we all know, in these African countries, most people are still struggling with a number of issues economically and financially, so it becomes difficult for them to afford some of these energy sources which are more cleaner and which are sustainable. However, what I think can be done as African, we need to come up with programs to promote programs that will ensure that these clean energy sources become affordable to any person at any level. Those that are deemed to be poor as well as those that are deemed to be rich, they can afford. So those are some of the programs that we need in our African countries, and promote the use of these cleaner energy to reduce the consumption of fossil fuels. That's my thought. Thank you. Is there anyone else with another contribution or anything they may want to add on this subject of fossil fuel consumption? This subject of fossil fuel consumption, I think Mr. Mandeya highlighted a lot of issues. It has ripple effects. It affects energy. It affects a lot of things. Most of the sustainable development goals, all of the 17 sustainable development goals can be affected because of fossil fuel consumption. So, like I said before, and I will repeat saying it again, there is need for us to address the issue of fossil fuel consumption in Africa. Is there anyone else?
If I may
Yes.
add in, just like what the government is doing on the solar products, maybe it can extend that to even gas, so that it becomes even much more successful. Accessible. It becomes much more accessible to the communities, and that would actually go a long way in mitigating against deforestation that is happening when people are trying to get charcoal from the forest. So maybe subsidies on gas could help.
Okay. Thank you for bringing up that. Mr. Mandeya is saying we need subsidies for these clean energy sources so that they will be affordable and they will be accessible for everyone, and we can reduce the consumption of fossil fuels. Thank you for that. I think as he said, the government is on to that program, and I would like to see it succeeding in time to come. Thank you, Mr. Mandeya. Is there anyone else from our audience? I would like to believe that the discussion that we have made here will help us come up with more innovative solutions, with more innovative development that will combat and reduce the use of fossil fuels and combat climate change, and also promote the achievement of our sustainable development goal.
Tinay. Hello.
Tinay, there's Tinay with the hand up.
Hello.
Yes,
Tinay.
yes, Mr. Mandeya. I just want to add a little bit much about what you have said in terms of subsidies and towards gas and solar powered equipment, or so to say. But I also think it is much more important, basing on the presentation that you have, the statistics that you have raised. Yeah, I'm saying this because I'm in Zimbabwe. The statistics that you have raised earlier on, there is higher percentage in terms of emissions and consumption of these fossil fuels through the automobiles. I also think maybe our governments should also put much more subsidies to these automobiles that are using greener fuel. For instance, the electric cars, those cars that can use electricity or else solar panel, maybe, or any other those that use the hydrogen and stuff like that, so that they can be in our country, maybe with lower cost or those subsidies, because that's where the higher percentage of these fossil fuels are being taken up, and also the cause of our global warming is coming from these automobiles. I also think maybe it is very great opportunities for us, we as Africans, I would like to as Africans, to really adopt and maybe set our eyes differently. Instead of focusing on our industry and commerce, to have these investors investing in greener energies, so that we can move a little bit much more further from those which can bring about the extraction of these fossil fuels. I'm not so sure I made that clear. I would like to say the investors who really want to invest in our countries, we rather take them much more those who have greener fuel energies more in our countries, rather than those who want to extract fossil fuels, such that we can move a little bit much further to use of green energies. Thank you.
Well, good. That's interesting insights there. Quite very interesting. But then, these government, and even with the West also playing double standards on us, want to come and exploit these fossil fuel energy sources, it becomes very difficult. They are put up in a situation where they are tempted, of course, to do business in the fossil energy because it brings in much revenue to them. And yet, on the other hand, those that come and exploit the energy are aware of the impact that this will have on our environment and the climate and weather. And they wouldn't really come up with the solutions to come and invest in in issues that promote green safe energy in Africa. So it's a very tricky situation that you raised there. I don't know how this can really be helped out. But there is something that was put up by I think it's Sia Makai. He's suggesting that those who are interested to read up on the SAIPA energy transition program, maybe it was quite some very interesting insights there that we can maybe glean and learn on. We will actually access that SAIPA energy. Maybe if you want to, for the benefit of all those that are on this platform, to give us a snippet of what the SAIPA energy transition program is all about. It will help maybe even stimulate interest and generate a lot of curiosity in wanting to access the document. Would you want Sia to maybe give us a snippet of what this SAIPA energy transition program is all about?
Hello again. So basically, South Africa has moved a bit ahead in terms of formulating or formalizing a program for moving away from fossil fuels. I think in Africa, South Africa is the second biggest emitter of greenhouse gases if we compare ourselves to the rest of the world. So I think it's Egypt and then South Africa comes second, obviously because we base our power from coal, and we may be relatively more developed than most other countries, and also of the mining industries and other industries that are using coal-based power. So they've developed this South African Independent Power Producers Association. So it's basically a lobbying organization that's pushing government to say, no, we cannot have a single power producing utility. In our case, it's called Eskom. I know in Namibia it's called NemPower. So they have the monopoly of producing or rather generating, transmitting and distributing electricity to households and industries. And they make a lot of money, but at the same time, you've seen how they are failing to keep up with the demand. That's why we have load shedding. So there's a lot of independent business people, but sadly, from my perspective, I find that it's companies coming from the likes of Germany, Turkey, France, and the US that are seeing a gap in South Africa to say, let's push South African government to move away from fossil fuels, i.e. coal, and start on green energy, because they have a commitment to the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. And second, it's the right thing to do, as you all know, in terms of climate change. But they are almost going ahead of all of us as Africans to tap this market, push that their technologies, that their solutions come to the fore, and again, unfortunately, make money before we even get off the starting blocks. So there is SAIPA, which is the association that's already established. It's got a management committee, which is fairly representative, but I believe that the smaller players may, if they don't get on board now, in 5 years' time, it may be too late. Already this year, 2020, there was a big tanker from Turkey that was proposing to supply or rather supplement South Africa's power challenges to the government at huge cost, and it was stopped. So you can see how far ahead the Europeans and other nations are as compared to us in terms of coming with solutions and technologies for green energy, which we as taxpayers, which we as Africans are going to end up paying for anyway. So I'm just saying, I'm concerned that we may be 2 to 5 years behind the rest of the world. At the same time, we are suffering presently, and we are going to even lose out more economically when the international companies or firms or conglomerates come in and say to our governments, here is a tanker full of solar panels, or however they create the green energy and put it onto the grid. But the government, through our taxes, pay that European or Turkish firm. So I'm encouraging all of us to, even in our countries, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Zambia, to push for established independent power producers associations to be established. And that way they can form a lobbying and a force to be reckoned with. One, against the government to push for change in using fossil fuels, but at the same time, prepare ourselves to be able to not necessarily fight back, but adapt technologies that have been proven in Germany, Turkey, Europe, but not at the expense of us as Africans. That's my contribution.
Very interesting lessons from there. So it's more of a lobby group. And I think, yeah, this can be adopted. I hope Sia, you will help us maybe in connecting with the lobby so that we learn quite a lot. A huge lobby, which actually is study oriented, so that it becomes the common language, so to speak, or so to put it, where we're all speaking with one voice to a common a challenge that we would want to address as SADC countries. It would be interesting and even much more welcome if that could be extended to even all the other countries in the region, that they adopt that kind of approach, the CYPA approach. Apparently, we have had challenges with people in SADC who do not understand the impact of pressure groups and how pressure groups would really influence on policy decision making. It's something that is still very new in Africa. We are coming from a background where we don't understand the impact of pressure groups in really pushing government into instituting certain policies that are friendly to the environment, that are friendly to the climate as well. So yeah, very interesting thing that you raised there about CYPA.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
I would gladly share the details with the administrator, and I agree with your sentiment. If it can be done in South Africa, it can be done through SADC, can be done at AU level, because like I said, as I said earlier on, the one achievement now is that when it's been legalized, it's forced the government to allow for a breakdown of the monopoly. Now we can have independent power producers supplying electricity to the government. So that's one achievement already. So I'll share the details with the administrator, and perhaps this South African model can be duplicated in other neighboring countries, if not as a single SADC entity or even at AU level. So I will share the details.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sia, for highlighting that. And we would like to know to get the gist of that program and share it with other people from different countries and see if they can adopt the same program and adopt the same policies and take the approach that South Africa is taking. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else who might want to say something on this subject, this interesting topic, the fossil fuel? Okay, if not,
It's nice. There's someone who has suggested there. Hello, Tina.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Yes, someone is suggesting there that we should maybe we can look at the fuel used in automobiles by using the leaded and unleaded. I don't know whether there is so much difference in these two. Can someone maybe shed a bit more light on these two types of maybe fuels used, leaded and unleaded, in terms of their emission into the environment? Maybe that's from I think is it from ESH?
Yeah, that was Tine. Unfortunately, I am Tichaona Mgazi, and Tine. Yes, Tine is the one who
sorry about
brought up that point, and I guess he said something on it. But Mr. Tine, Mr. Mandeya, I want a clarification on a certain point that you have raised on lead and unleaded petrol. Can you shed more light on that for our audience so that they can know on that issue? Mr. Tine, are you with us?
Yes, teacher. Yes, thank you very much for that. Mr. Mandeya, unfortunately, it comes from the chemistry side of a lot of chemistry inside it between the unleaded and leaded fuel. But if it have something to do with the emitting a certain compound that the leaded fuel, it emits a certain compound that exacerbate the global warming, that have got contribution to the global warming. And the unleaded fuel, it doesn't have that compound. That I think the compound called tetraethanol, ethyl, I think so. I'm not so sure. Yeah, tetraethyl. That's the kind of component that is emitted by leaded fuel into the environment that have much impact in terms of global warming and those components that are actually exacerbate the issue of global warming. However, the unleaded one doesn't have that that compound. Mr. Mandeya, did you try to get me or anyone who gets me there?
Yes. Okay, so you're saying the unleaded one?
Sorry?
Which one is much more dangerous to the environment between the two?
The leaded one. The leaded one is much more, the unleaded one is much healthier than as compared to the leaded one.
Okay, and it's the more expensive?
Of course, that's what we have been talking about since from the starting of this conversation. That, however, these guys, I mean, those guys who invest in certain businesses of these fuels, they put much more prices to make this thing of greener energy being expensive more than the lethal one. So I think there is also a need to look at that side where we need to promote in terms of pricing, like what CI have said. You see, these Western companies, they are coming out there, coming to Africa to invest, and we pay for that again. So it's quite expensive, but we need to have a look at that. Maybe it's worth to do that in terms of when we are looking when we are looking in terms of the climate change and also the effect that it will have to our future generation in terms of global warming and all the stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So it also applies to diesel, leaded and unleaded. Does that apply to diesel or it's only to petrol?
All I know is it applied to petrol only, not the diesel.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because I understand there are some countries that are beginning to phase out diesel cars.
Yeah, 100%. There are other countries who are moving a little bit much faster to close out these diesel cars. because I'm not sure, I didn't do much research about this, but I believe diesel, it's only emit much more of these compounds in terms of global warming that are attributed to global warming as compared to petrol, which is the unleaded one. So maybe they would like to move from the diesel ones moving towards to, I'm not so sure about that Mr. Mandeya.
Okay, thank you.
Quite interesting, and I think the most keynote point that has been raised is affordability of most of these issues. And with what Mr. Tine highlighted, I guess the best alternative will be electric cars. But likewise, affordability is more of an issue also. So that is the main thing that we need to address. Prices of these green soil fuel sources, the prices of implementing them, the prices of utilizing or getting the service. It needs to be addressed so that they can be affordable to everyone and to anyone at any level. Thank you, guys, for that contribution. Is there anyone else who might want to add on? Who feel like they need to say something on these subjects from our audience? Okay, if not, I guess this brings us to the end of our session. Oh, there's a hand. Mr. Zani, you can come up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teach. I was thinking on the issue of, which was raised by Mr. Tinay, of using lead petrol and unleaded petrol. I think if we consider lead petrol as expensive, we might need to consider, is it expensive more than the future of the sustainable future of the younger ones we have? Let's also consider the effect of the unleaded petrol to the environment, the effect which it is causing to the environment due to climate changes. So I think let's compare its expense compared to its effect, rather than just considering maybe lead fuel is cheaper than unleaded. But we should also, I think, consider its effects.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ruzani, for that. I think the point that is highlighting is that okay, there is a common saying. I guess everyone has heard this before, that everything that is cheap is expensive. And I think that is the same issue here. Once we go for the cheaper sources of energy, it also it becomes costly in other aspects, because those energy sources such as these fossil fuels, they then bring about other issues that will be costly to us more than if we had only used the expensive sources. So whenever we are making decision towards using the cheaper sources and using the expensive sources, we need to consider
All right, as Teach was saying, I think you lost connection out there, but I also need to have a little bit of contribution towards these greener energies. I think we also need to look at the other project called Biogas. It's another source of energy that is moving around, and it is tremendously adopted in different kind of rural setups and other setups that we have, community setups. But I think in Africa, we also need to really consider on that, the issue of biogas. I do not know, maybe, is there anyone who have got a very good case study in his or her country where this biogas is really being adopted as a source of fuel? I've heard about it, I've read about it, but implementation of this idea of biogas, I haven't got any practical experience of it, but I haven't read about it. Is there anyone who have something to say towards that biogas, maybe?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tine, for covering up when I was disconnected. Mr. Tine's point is that one of the sources of energy that have been introduced is biofuel and bioenergy from biomass, and people are talking about it, but he wants to know if there is anyone from any country or from any community that have experienced the use of these biogas and who might want to share what they know about these biogas, so that many people can adopt and also opt for that energy source. Is there anyone from our audience? Okay, I guess Mr. Zani did lower his hand when he raised it. Okay. If not, I think there's no one with such experience, but it's one of the energy sources that I think in our countries we should also adopt, since biomass is now abundant in everywhere we work. When we talk about biomass, we are talking about any living organisms, that is plants, humans, and that those dead live, if those are living things, when they are dead, they can be used and to extract energy that can be used for other uses. Okay, I can see there is a hand from Sony. You are welcome, sir, to speak. Sony, you can take this opportunity. Okay, I guess that was a mistake, but yeah, we really need to promote the use of biogas. It's one of the alternatives that can be used to curb this use of fossil fuels in our countries. Thank you. Sony, your hand is up. I think you had something to say. Okay. I think that was a mistake. Okay, there's another hand from Mr. Tinashe. You can come up, say.
Thank you so much, Teach. I don't know much on biogas, but I think guys we should check on the African Biogas Partnership Program. It was a project which was undertaken in Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Burkina Faso. By June 2018, about 320,000 people have benefited from this. I think we should check on it. It's a good program which is trying by all means to invest in biogas so that all these nations, we have renewable source of energy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zani, for highlighting that, and I would appreciate if you add that comment on the chat so that people can know the program that you just highlighted. That is the ABPP, the Africa, it's Africa Biogas Partnership Program. So I think if you add it on the comment section, people can take note of it and see what the program is about, so that you can also adopt it in our nations. Thank you for that. Mr. Sony, your hand has been up for quite a long. Are you ready?
Hello.
Okay,
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, in our country.
Hello. You can pardon.
Please. Hello.
Hello.
We in our country we are promoting this biogas, bioenergy. In each houses, the government is giving some subsidiary to build a biogas plant. So we can at least use our kitchen purpose and everything. We get the gas from the wastage of cow waste and everything we can use for the making the biogas. It's only cost maybe $1,000 or something like that. We can complete that biogas plant in our home for our home purpose only. So our government is giving the subsidy to give and build the plant. So we are getting the waste of animals to use as a fuel for this purpose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soni, for that. I think Mr. Tine also had highlighted that as a suggestion that the governments should subsidize the rollout of these sustainable energy sources. And like Mr. Soni has highlighted, in their country they have already done that, and they are realizing the success of it. So in our African countries, I would like to challenge everyone. We are ambassadors of our countries now, so we really need to push for these and develop or establish those pressure groups that have been suggested in this, and promote the rollout of these sustainable energy sources. Mr. Mandeya, your hand is up. You can come up, sir. Thank you.
I think it was a mistake.
It's okay. It's okay. It's fine, sir. Okay, is there anyone else who may have anything to say on this session? Okay, if not, I think this brings us towards the end of our session, and I would like to appreciate Mr. Mandeya for the presentation, for an insightful presentation that he has given us, what he has shared with us, and all the discussion that has come up from this topic that was presented with Mr. Mandeya. And I would like to believe that all the points that have been raised here, we are going to take them up and implement them, so that it won't just end here. It will bring up something that will bring up changes with issues that we are facing in relation to energy. So thank you, Mr. Mandeya. Thank you for the time that you are.
Thank you for hosting me.
Okay, thank you. You are welcome, sir. And also thanks for those that have contributed to this session. Like I highlighted at the beginning of the session, I said towards the end we are going to make a few announcements. So one of the announcements is our upcoming session on Friday the 17th. On Friday the 17th of, I thought I had been disconnected there. Okay, I was making an announcement on our upcoming session on Friday the 13th of September. That is the 17th of September. That is next week. We are going to have another session, and it's also addressing the issue of sustainable energy. And this topic will be presented by Engineer Michael Sakala. He's an energy lead for the Worldwide Fund in Zambia. They have programs that are aiming towards the promotion of they have programs that are aiming at achieving the Sustainable Development Goal number 7. And I guess they have implemented quite a number of projects in their country. He's from Zambia, and he's going to share with us and shed more light on some of the projects and some of the issues that have had, the challenges, the obstacles, and what he thinks will be done. And I think with this presentation, he also answer one of the questions that was raised in this webinar session on how we can combat and reduce the use of our fossil fuel consumption in Africa and promote the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal number 7. I'd like to I would like to encourage everyone to tune in and join in this session so that you don't miss out on this topic. And also, likewise, like I said before, everyone who may want to be part of our webinar session, you are free to join the opportunity, and the door is open for everyone. You can contact us on our social media platforms. And also, if you want to feature in our magazine that we publish on monthly basis, you can also contact us on our social media platforms so that we can feature you in our magazine. Okay, with that, I would like to thank everyone that has joined us today, everyone that has joined this session, and this brings us to the end of our session. But before we close in, as usual, we are going to take a group photo. So I'm encouraging everyone right now to turn on your mic, to turn on your video, so that we can take a group photo. Okay, also, as people are turning on their cameras, those are there are links that have been shared on the chat section for those that may want to join our WhatsApp groups, and also subscribe to our social media platforms to contact us for webinars as well as articles like I've highlighted, and also get more information and from the posts that we'll be having, and not be left out, and get updates from that subscription. So you can follow us on those links. Okay, I'd encourage everyone to turn on their video camera for a group photo. So everyone say cheese so that we can take the snap. Okay, thank you. The photo has been captured. Thank you everyone. It was a great session that we had today on this topic, and thanks to our great presenter for taking the time with us to share his thought on this subject. And I would like to wish everyone a great weekend. Keep safe. COVID is upon us. Mask up and let's sanitize and adhere to the COVID-19 measures. And also, let's not forget to combat climate change. Even though we are fighting COVID-19, let's not forget about climate change and the energy issues. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.